Hello and welcome to part 3 of this G-Audio Getting Started tutorial. We'll be talking about pulses. I'm starting with a completely empty scene and just with the G-Audio asset imported. First thing I'll do is create a G-Audio sample bank, and that needs to load a sound bank. So I'll grab a sound bank from the examples folder. Shared, we have a 44.1 gigahertz sound bank we can load, create. Now, as we saw in the previous tutorials, we can load it in edit mode. Here we'll auto load in edit mode so that we're always loaded. And we can preview our samples by clicking these buttons. Now that doesn't get us very far when it comes to making music. For that, we have a module called the Master Pulse module. I'll create one right now, create G-Audio Master Pulse. That simply pulses on the number of steps you wish and on the steps you actually wish the pulse to happen. So we could have as many pulses as you wish. We can have 16 and omit the 6th. We'll stick to something simple, to 4 steps here. You can bypass all steps at once. You can randomly bypass some steps and you have a percentage here. You can set BPM and you can change settings so that you can have the period of the pulse in seconds or in milliseconds. Milliseconds is very useful for granular synthesis, and it can go very, very low, down to 5 milliseconds per pulse. Back to BPM and at a reasonable value. Okay, now if we start the pulse, nothing happens. There's no one listening to it, no sample being triggered. Before triggering samples, I'll just select the default player. We don't need to know about what's happening in the audio source. And I'll set the volume of track 0 to be a bit lower and pan it a bit to the right and apply a low pass filter to it so that you can hear me when I talk over it. Now, as a child of the Master Pulse, I'll create a G-Audio pulsed pattern. By default, G-Audio creates objects as children of the selected game object. So that's quite handy, but if you're not used to it and don't like it, give me a shout. I may include an option that allows you to specify which behavior you'd like to see. Now, a pulse pattern needs to listen to a pulse, so we can drag and drop the pulse we want to listen to. You can start the pulse from here if you wish. It can randomly bypass the pulse as well, so both the pulse can randomly bypass and not pulse, and objects which listen to pulses can randomly bypass and not react to specific pulses. Now, we react to all 4 pulses. If I change and not emit pulse index 2, for example, we'll see it disabled here. Okay, we won't do that for now. We'll emit all pulses, but we'll randomly bypass 71% of them. Then we need to pull samples from a sample bank. So we'll just select a bank. It's loaded, good. If it wasn't loaded, we could load it from here. Then an envelope. We won't go into envelopes, that's the subject of the next tutorial. So the samples will trigger, will not have any envelope applied to them. We'll just hear the full samples as they are. Now, samples, these are the sounds you actually want to play. So we'll play through the default player, track 0, then map to pulse index. That's how the samples will be played. Here, map to pulse index, it means that the current step will be used to select which sample to play. And we can just add samples like this, select them from the samples in the bank that we have. And now we have 4 samples that will be played on the 4 steps of the pulse. I can start the pulse. Remember, we're randomly bypassing. If we were not, we would just hear the samples in a row. Let's keep the bypass behavior and add some more samples to trigger. we'll just add all of them and make the pulse much faster. If we go down in the random bypassing, and back to something pretty random. Now I'll select randomized instead of map to pulse index, because we were only hearing the first 4 samples here, since we only have 4 steps in our pulse. Now we can hear any sample at any moment. And because of the low pass, this note here, C2, is a bit loud, so I'll turn its pitch down. Its gain down. So this is gain. You can reset it by clicking. And we can specify pitch shifts here as well. Except here, since we don't have an envelope, pitch shifts won't have any effects. You need an envelope for pitch shift to have an effect. We'll cover that in the next tutorial. That just flew over what the pulse module is capable of. There are many options that you can play around with, and I hope you will. So that's it for now, and I'll see you in part 4. Bye bye.